Maybe the sun gave me the power, for I could swim Loch Lomond and be home in half an hour. Maybe the air gave me the drive, for I'm all aglow and alive. What a day this has been, what a rare mood I'm in. Why, it's almost like being in love. There's a smile on my face for the whole human race. Why, it's almost like being in love. All the music of life seems to be like a bell that is ringing for me. And from the way that I feel when that bell starts to peal, I would swear I was falling. I could swear I was falling. It's almost like being in love. When we walked up the brae,
not a word did we say. It was almost like being in love. But your arm linked in mine made the world kind of fine.
It was almost like being in love.
All the music of life seems to be
like a bell that is ringing for me. And from the way that I feel when that bell starts to peal,
I would swear I was falling.
I could swear I was falling. It's almost like being in love.
Well, hello, good afternoon. How the devil are you? I must say, I'm pretty good. Pretty good. I want to talk about schools again, and I want to talk about labelling. And I've told this story before, and I'm going to tell you again. Recently, my 15-year-old was in school, and there's this national civic thing going on. And it's something to do with, I don't know, how to be a citizen. I have no idea. But I think it's part of the kind of parents get lost thing, like the all that sort of stuff. You can have residential trips and so on. And my son was asked at 15 if he would fill out, sticky up bit of hair, if he would fill out what his gender identity is and what sexuality is. And I felt that was an infringement of his privacy. I thought it was really inappropriate. And as such, I called the school and told them exactly what I thought. And their reasoning, I think this is really interesting. Their reasoning was, well, we want everyone to feel included. And my answer to that was, if that was genuinely what you wanted to achieve, you wouldn't ask. Because by asking, you're saying that you need to know that information for some reason. And I have searched the very depths of my relatively clean mind, and I can't actually work out why it is that you would ever need to infringe a teenager's privacy to ask them what their sexuality is. I just don't feel it's relevant. And I just think if we're genuinely, right, good people, and we don't think there's any difference between someone who is gay or straight or bisexual or straight, if we genuinely mean that, do you know what? We wouldn't ask. That doesn't mean we're not allowed to know, or nobody is allowed to make it known, or if your gay teacher decided to get married or your straight teacher decided to get married, that they wouldn't be able to tell the class. Although, to be fair, I don't know how much I want teachers to bring their private lives into school at all. I'd rather they didn't know. I certainly know any teacher friends of mine would rather not live anywhere near their children because they don't want to see their children when they're shopping in a supermarket. They don't want to see the children that they teach when they're out of school at all. They want a completely private life because when they're in school, they're a teacher. They're not a whole human. I quite like the idea that I certainly thought Miss Lush, who was my teacher at Hindhays Infant School in Street, the head teacher, I sort of thought that she didn't really exist outside the school. And that's what I would like to see more and more teachers experience. I remember going, I remember going to my son's, one of my children, to their parents' evening when they were at secondary school, and the PE teacher, well, she was a PE teacher, but she was his tutor, turning up in really high stilettos and skin tight trousers and a vest. And I just thought, profession, what's happened to the teaching profession? So I'm probably quite old fashioned when it comes to what I want from teachers. I want them just to teach. I don't want teachers coming into school in anything other than business attire. I like them to take it seriously. And I want to talk to you a little bit about queering the classroom. And I want to also tell you that teachers lie to parents, and that there has been a real drive in schools and attitudes around parents, that is completely inconsistent. On the one hand, schools, like if you have a badly behaved child whose parents don't seem to get him up in time, and you look at the late book. I remember being late with my children one day, and in the late book, it's things like couldn't get the little one into a pushchair, couldn't get into the car on time, child wouldn't clean teeth. And these were things that parents were quite okay in telling teachers. Things like children not being potty trained before they go to school. There's just this weird thing where we are both not expecting parents to act like parents and pretending that they're not adults. Um, and also that we know better than them. So on the one hand, there's kind of making parents feckless and not responsible. And on the other, there's intervening in families where I just don't think it's relevant or appropriate. So I'm quite happy for safeguarding to exist. I think it should exist. I think that there are certain situations where families are useless. And I really, really like the idea that we have something very official that comes in and helps those families. Oh, sorry. But on the other hand, I think stay out of my children's business. And certainly when it comes to that. So there's something called querying the classroom. I'm going to be very, very, very brief on this, but I'm right about this. And I want you to imagine, if you don't think I'm right, I want you to ask yourself why this is happening, why these barriers are being eroded, why it is that there is this weird, it feels like a state grab of your children's minds, and it feels like a separation of parents and children in many, many cases. It's just very odd. There is also another issue in schools where schools get more money for having children with special educational needs. So they get more money pumped into the school. So there is an impetus sometimes to statement children that shouldn't be statemented, or give them a label where they don't need one. That gives the school more money. But then what doesn't happen with that money is it doesn't really go on that specific child, which is where it should go. And then more broadly, I'm very, very worried about this idea that more and more nurseries and childcare facilities, preschool, and even before preschool, daycare facilities are attached to schools. And I think what will happen with the Labour government is they will say this school gets X amount of money. We've increased the budget for schools. But actually what they've done is each individual child has less money. So there's less money per capita, even though there's more money going into the schools. And then you'll see, just institutions. I don't think it's right for a child to start going to the same institution from like a year, and be attached to a school and then stay at that school and onward. I think transition times are very important for children, but that really is beyond what we're going to discuss today. So I'm just going to tell you what querying the classroom is, and this is AI. But this is broadly what we're talking about. Querying the classroom is a term used to describe the incorporation of queer theory, Foucault, paedophile, into the curriculum to create more inclusive educational spaces. This can include teaching queer topics. So incorporating LGBTQ plus into queer politics into the school curriculum, such as history, to help the students understand diversity of human sexuality and gender. I just ask you why we need to do that, why a school needs to do that. And maybe it needs to happen a bit later in the school, like, latter half of secondary school, in a very minor way. But why it's in preschool, kindergarten, and primary schools, I have no idea. Using queer theory to destabilize heteronormativity, because most people are straight, and recognize marginalized groups. Again, I don't know why a school needs to do that. If a school has an ethos of everyone is equal, I don't know why you need to then label everyone to say you're all equal. Why not just say you're all a pupil of X school and therefore you are welcome in the school community? That should be the unifier, the identity of being a pupil of that school. Supporting gender expression, so creating supportive environments for students. And notice they say students, they mean pupils, they mean children, to explore and express their gender. And then there's different resources, so queering the art in the classroom, gender expression and inclusivity in early childhood, and so on and so on. So this is the idea. By labeling people, by giving everyone a label and then saying you're welcome with that label, you actually divide. Like you just do. It doesn't make any other sense in any other way. So on that note, I'm going to play you something from a school, primary school. And this is about No Outsiders. I think No Outsiders, educate and celebrate, which had the patron. One of their patrons was Peter Tatchell. Hello, red flags. So again, that's Peter Tatchell having anything to do with small children's curriculums. So anyway, here we are. This is No Outsiders at the Berkeley Academy.
It provides almost a scaffold for the teachers, but also for the children. There's no rules to it.
So it's a scaffold. So it's a supportive kind of structure, but there are no rules.
You can take from the text what you want to take from the text. It allows...
What's the point of the text?
Children and staff to again be quite flexible in their thinking, fluid in their thoughts. There's no set response. It's very interactive.
So there's no set response. You can be flexible and fluid. There's no rules, but it's a scaffold.
It allows for challenge in a very gentle way.
I mean, is this a political kind of thing? Is this like Putin's political technician where you don't really have any idea what they're saying?
You have to go with what presents. And I think that's really exciting. When we talk about how things go with No Outsiders, staff will very often say, I was really surprised by some of the conversations we were having in our classrooms today. And
when little Tommy came up with the list of kinks that he asked about, I was shocked, totally shocked.
That came from the text. So the text almost just provides the platform. We could go anywhere.
So it's a platform, but there's no rules, and it provides a platform, but there are no rules, and there's no structure, but it's a scaffold.
Anywhere.
Are teachers just a bit thick these days? I'm just asking.
The Berkeley Academy, we are a 2-form entry primary school. We have a delightful school community.
No Outsiders was brought to us at a local governing board meeting well before it was introduced into the school.
No Outsiders has really given us the opportunity to talk about things that maybe we hadn't talked about as much as we could have done previously.
Because, mate, it's not appropriate. What we hadn't done before is we hadn't talked about anal sex with the kids, and now we can. We hadn't asked the children, prepubescent 7-year-olds. We hadn't said to those 7-year-olds, who do you want to have sex with? We hadn't done that. That's on us. Shame on us.
Previously.
Wouldn't it be boring if we were all the same? Yeah, it would.
So one of those things is looking at inclusion in lots of different forms. Obviously, as a school, we are not in a...
What these teachers, what they're all saying, right? If it's not broke, don't fix it. Was there a spate of homophobic bullying amongst 6-year-olds in our schools prior to this shit? No, there wasn't. There wasn't. Was there a big vacuum being filled by bigotry when we didn't discuss different sexualities or gender identity bullshit with children in schools? No. Has this fixed any problem? No. What it's done is it's just made a few thick teachers feel better about what they're doing, and just, it's so demented that any of this exists at all.
Diverse, multicultural school, but we do have a lot of families that are made up in different ways. And for us, it's really important that we educate our children to understand that.
So what I'd like to ask these teachers is, prior to doing No Outsiders, were you finding that when a child came to school with maybe one of their parents in a wheelchair, were you finding that you just let the children just roundly attack and go nuts? Or would that have just been a little bit of a moment through osmosis where you accept that parent and you make it perfectly normal and nobody's a special case, and you just make that acceptable? And I'm not saying that necessarily there is a big deal where kids are weird about parents in wheelchairs, but sometimes children are curious if they've never come across somebody from all different walks of life or with different abilities, and then all you do is, through osmosis and acceptance and just being decent and normal and treating those families normally, you teach everybody that it's not a big deal and it's nothing to write home about.
And understand the children that they are in the school with, so that hopefully as they grow up, they understand that the world they live in.
I'm just going to say, everything we've seen so far is rainbows. When you go into a No Outsider school, which I have, where they lied to that parent, as soon as you walk in, there's a massive, great big display. So here, right opposite the reception, is this huge kind of rainbow crap all over the school, and lots of diversity and pride in our school and all this stuff. So this idea that it's not specifically about sexuality is bullshit. I just feel, in order to queer the classroom, they have used disability, multiculturalism, race and religion as camouflage to what their central message and impetus actually is.
Involves lots of different types of families and setups.
Each year group has books that they use as a focus.
Now, I will tell you that if you've got small children, right? Let's say your small child is smacking people at school, then, a bit like Enid Blyton, what you would do is you would tell them a story about a child who smacks children. So through narrative, you can really teach children lessons, which is why old-fashioned stories had a lot of jeopardy, and there were really integral teaching in it. For example, I read a story which is Johnny Come At Once. And it was an Enid Blyton story, and it was about a little boy who never came when his mother called him, so he missed going out on a play date, or what we used to say going out to play. He missed out on some chocolates. He missed out on all these things because he didn't go when his mother called him. So that's a lesson story. So if you want your child to stop smacking, this is my advice as a woman who sent her kids to Montessori. You would tell them stories. So stories and narrative are a really, really good way to groom a child or to teach a child into behaving like a decent human being. It's a really good way. It's often much more effective. This indirect storytelling is much more effective than just directly telling a child. So that's why these books are so dangerous because they just implant. They're a really good way to craft and shape a child's thinking.
In order to deliver the content for each half term, which is very comfortable for our children because they're used to accessing the rest of the curriculum through story.
So basically, red.
See, right. So I'm just going to rewind this a tiny bit. I want you to remember, if you can recall, I went into a school with a mother, and this school, and I've got you can search a recording. I'll share it on Twitter a bit later. X, sorry. And when we were in that with 2 safeguarding leads, the mother was like about this red crayon, blue crayon. And she said it was all about gender identity. And I think what it was is the red crayon or the blue crayon, can't remember, had the outside of the crayon had a different wrapper on it. And this crayon was allowed to do some things and not others because of this wrapper. And it just felt like it wasn't right. And the teacher sort of tried to disguise that the difference between the red crayon and the blue crayon were boys and girls, tried to disguise that it was about biological sex and it was about gender identity nonsense, so-called gender identity nonsense. And they lied, and they kept lying to this mother and saying, oh, yeah, but other schools might use it like that, but we don't use it like that. And then I asked the question, how did the book get into the school? And the book got into the school through No Outsiders. So this is that book that was discussed where they lied to that parent and said it wasn't about coercing, manipulating, grooming children into this whole gender identity stuff. And also this fixed idea that boys, I think they sort of said, some children like football, and then they sort of said, boys like football, and they totally leaked what it was all about, and they lied.
Story.
So basically, red wasn't actually red, and the outside he was, but in the inside he was actually blue, and nobody ever told him. He was feeling very anxious, saying, oh, this colour doesn't look very right, can someone tell me what's happening? Or yeah, and then it just felt really like he was alone and no one was there for him. At the end of the story, he felt really happy and calm, and it makes me feel like everyone is unique and you're not alone, and everyone can talk to you and communicate. If people get excluded, they might feel sad and lonely,
But no, this is what's so awful. What children are being excluded? I'll tell you actually who gets excluded. Children on the autism spectrum, because they don't quite get the nuances and the they just don't get the age appropriate communication kind of cues that other children give. So you'll find about 90% of children on the autism spectrum will report being excluded. Now, there's no quick fix to that. It's grueling. It's terrible. And you can't, there's no bridge for those particular children who are excluded socially from other children who just don't get it, who repeatedly don't get it. And they give off a vibe to other children who are also fighting their way through the world with their own insecurities. And actually, those children often get bullied, and much of their bullying is not just overt bullying, but being totally ostracized from their own sort of age social group. That's not being addressed. Nobody is addressing that at school. I don't even know how you would, but nobody is addressing that at school. But this particular crayon story is all about gender identity and the fact that inside this crayon was really a boy, but everyone expected them to behave like a girl. Those things aren't happening. I don't know. I would guess. I don't know this to be true. I suspect many of you do who've got children in these primary schools, that actually bullying is no better whether or not they've got these bullshit inclusion, diversity, everyone's included programs. I would say that often those schools are pretty horrendous when it comes to bullying and dealing with bullying. I have this feeling that actually, and in fact, we know when I went into this school that a child who wouldn't go along with the gender identity bullshit would actually be told off by teachers, excluded by children. It's almost like they're just introducing another framework for children to adhere to, and the children that don't can be bullied.
And you need to let them join no matter what they look like.
Obviously, we have a weekly whole school assembly where one of the senior leaders will introduce the text.
I mean, look, perhaps I don't know. All these words around all these words like teamwork, success, resilience. If that's really what your school is about, does anyone really think that having the words up makes any difference? It so feels like everything is, oh, look what we can do. Look what we can do. It's very, very odd. And it's just too many lies and it's disingenuous.
Or a situation that we want to explore through the assemblies, and then each class will have their own text, and then they use those in their curriculum time. But we also have a weekly class assembly, and that's usually where No Outsiders is explored at an age-appropriate level.
So weekly, they're introducing this shit in the schools. I would imagine this school is doing so well academically that they shouldn't be using that. Like, what's happened to singing at schools? What's happened to all that? It's by trying to fix something that I think was working pretty well, they've done. Teaching is so off. It's so off right now.
So at the Berkeley, we always welcome parents' contributions to the children and the curriculum that we share with the pupils. So we really want them to be able to understand what we're teaching their children.
Again, if we trusted you, you wouldn't have to invite us in all the time. I don't know what this is, but it's bullshit. It's just nonsense. Just teach the children. Let them do well at maths and English and art and drama. Let them do well at stuff. You don't need to bring us in every freaking week to see what you're doing. Just do your job, teachers.
So that hopefully they can also support that at home.
As parents, we were made aware as the No Outsiders, and Carly's been telling me about it as well. I think for her parents, I think same-sex couple.
And you know what? You're not all wonders, children. You're just part of a school. Not every child is special, and yet all children are special. My children are very special, but I know they're special to me. Like, you're so amazing. Oh my God, you're so amazing. You're so amazing. Oh, you managed to sit on your ass for like 2 minutes and shut up. Oh my God, that's so amazing. Like, how is anyone supposed to understand what achievement really is? If they're just told that everything they do all the time is just incredible.
I think as parents of a child with additional needs, I think more than maybe most people, we recognise the need for something like this. In the presentation there, I liked the story of the mixed, we're using colours that children all relate to, and obviously that reflects colours, different people's colours, different ethnicities. So it's
Oh yeah, those purple people, they're everywhere.
Subconscious teaching as well for me, using relatable things for children. I know that then applies to the wider society.
Governors have received presentations from staff.
Grooming the whole school community.
The lead member of staff has taken photographs and put together PowerPoint presentations about work that children have done.
I think that the children are able to talk about and have conversations that we might not have had before.
Yeah, because you didn't need to. You don't need to have conversations about many of the themes that this No Outsiders wants to ram down the throats of kids.
And I think due to the diverse world that we currently live in, I think children can often compare themselves to others or put pressure on themselves in order to fit in.
Yeah, and they will anyway.
And I feel like with the No Outsiders scheme, it allows the children to feel confident.
It doesn't. I mean, this is my whole point. It doesn't do any of those things. It genuinely doesn't. Telling a child who has a chaotic life, who feels lonely or feels anything, And actually, I think the more you say, do you feel okay? Are you okay? Do you feel included? Are you lonely? Do you feel okay? Are you all right? Are you all right? I think that what that does is it says to a child, oh, maybe I'm different. But the truth is we're all different, and we just need to spend less time thinking about ourselves.
Their own identities and feel like they can be themselves and it's okay to be different.
When any child thought that it's not okay. When my son, one of my sons, was going up to secondary school, right, is my youngest, none of my kids ever had an issue. They never had an issue starting school. They never had an issue going to new schools. They didn't have an issue going to nursery. So they went to a Montessori school, which was a very few hours a week. They never went into daycare. And you know what? There wasn't one occasion when any one of my children was upset. Now, that might be because they were just delighted to get away from me, but they were so secure and I was so excited and they were so excited about doing the next thing. It was like, it wasn't like, Mummy's going to leave you. Are you sad? Don't be worried. Don't worry about it. Don't be sad. It's all going to be all right. It was very much like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. I can't wait. Oh, what you're going to wear, blah, blah, blah. It was all this sort of stuff. And so when you drop them off, it's fine. The only child of mine that ever even uttered the word anxiety about going to secondary school was because they'd had a week at school talking about, you might get anxious that you'll get lost. You might get blah, blah, blah. This is going to happen. You might have anxiety about all the big children at school. It hadn't even occurred to any of my other children that these things might be an issue. And I just think I don't know what anybody gains by this consistent mental health bullshit piled onto the shoulders of children, but it's horrible.
Different from other people.
Dear Mrs. Gore, I'd like to thank you for being the best head teacher I could possibly wish for. You're so nice to me and the other children in this school. You treat everyone the same and you make sure that there are no outsiders. And if there are, you always make it right no matter what. You also make me feel that I can share my voice even if I get the answer wrong.
Jesus Christ. So anyway, that's what I just wanted to show you, because I think there's this thing that we're doing. Is Kelly on Ozempic? I pig wish I was. Somebody just asked. I wish I was. If anyone can get any in this country, that'd be great. I could do with, although everybody looks so ill. But there is a disconnect between what something claims it wants to do and what it actually does. And I think the disconnect between the No Outsiders program, what it claims it wants to do, and what really it wants to do, very, very, very far away. So Kath says here, my grandson is autistic and bullying is off the scale. Yeah, it's horrendous. It's horrendous. I don't know what the answer is to it. I think, I don't know, getting really cross with the bullies and saying no and punishing the bullies, that seems like a good idea to me. But these days, you have to have restorative justice where you've got some nasty bullying kid who may not be a bully through any fault of their own. They may be in the care system. You can't expect children who've been rejected by the people that are supposed to love them, or not worthy of being looked after, and or abandoned, whatever. You can't expect them to come into school as well-rounded 8-year-olds, and they should be looked after, and they should be given very strict boundaries in school so that they know how to operate. That, I think, that works. It's just awful. And it really annoys me when you see statistics about who's bullied in school. Children with autism are never mentioned. It is a national emergency. It's just so awful. It's just so awful for those children, and nobody cares about them. And if you're very, very unlucky, they'll get involved with CAMS and end up thinking that they're a different sex. So let's have a look at the man that started the whole No Outsiders thing. And he's called Andrew Moffat. And I think he might have been bullied as an effeminate boy at school, and he's a gay man. And I think he's trying to retroactively correct what was done to him. That's what I think is happening. I think he's retroactively trying to correct what was done to him. And he's totally wrong. It's just 100% wrong. And you can't go back. And actually, there are ways, I'm sure. Personally, I think discipline is the way to resolve these particular issues. Discipline, saying the word no, having people get angry, all of those things that we sort of thought were bad for children, they're not bad for children. It helps them understand exactly where they are.
Year 4, the year before at Green Meadow Primary School as part of Excelsior Mat. I'm also the author of No Outsiders resource. Well, I say author. I've written this resource called No Outsiders, which is about teaching children to be confident about who they are in preparation for life in modern Britain.
Brilliant. And I'm Ian. I'm the Managing Director at Reading Solutions UK. We provide a programme called Reading Plus as the base of what we do, but we do a lot of other things as well. Our company ethos is to improve outcomes for young learners, however that looks. So that's what we want to do. We work with 1,000 schools nationwide, but we also put on things like international reading conferences and all sorts of little things we do as well to support teaching. So we've got the same outlook. So Andrew, you just said you were started off as a teacher, moving through writing books. So do you want to delve a bit more into that? Just give us a bit more detail around that.
Yes, I suppose I started teaching in 1995, and I've never had a break. I've always been a teacher. I spent a lot of my career working in behaviour units, sort of PRUs, where children being excluded, and our job really.
See, I think here, right. One day I went to my kids' state secondary school, and outside, like, everybody's supposed to stay in school, and outside the school as I'm approaching, there's some kids just hanging around in school uniform during the teaching day, right, during the day. And they're hanging around, and then I go into the reception area and someone's banging a metal scooter on reception, and I just think teaching's lost their way. And sometimes children are excluded at primary school. Now, that tells me that there's something really, really, really bad that's gone on. It's a bit like I talked last week about the fact that some children aren't allowed to go to the toilet during break time. Now, if you can't manage children having some autonomy over their own behaviour, going to the toilet at break time because you've lost the school, then that says that you need to do something really fundamental. And Catherine Burblesing, who is at Tower Hamlets School, she's cracked it. Like, rule with an iron fist. She has no phones in school. She has no talking between lessons. She has silence in classrooms. And those kids are doing really, really well. And there is this very low expectation. It's a very nasty, pernicious kind of cloud under the school system, which is, if you come from a rough area, a poor area, you can't be expected to behave. If your mum, right, is a chaotic nightmare who can't get you to school in time in the morning, that then everyone has to pander to you and your temper and your kind of lashing out and your behaviour. Everyone has to pander to you all day. Now, I'm pretty sure when I was at school, there were kids that also had chaotic lives. I know there was a family that I knew. The mother had left, which was really, really unusual for my age group, where children were raised without a mum because their mother had walked out or had like mental health issues and had ended up in some sort of psychiatric unit. And the dads weren't so great, and their daughters or whatever. And those girls and boys, they probably had just the same kind of blank slate as those other children. And the difference is, when you came into my primary school and my junior school, my infant and junior school, that you couldn't get away. You couldn't continue to be like this. You couldn't lash out without some punishment. And there was a care in the discipline. The discipline was about helping you be a functioning member of society. It wasn't about breaking these children. And it's very odd that the more we pander, the worse the behaviour has got, to the point now that teachers barely have any control over certain sections of their school. And in state schools, it seems to be if you're not in the top sets, then your teaching is shit. The behavior's terrible. The teachers have given up. It's just, if we don't resolve this, and we don't resolve this with no outsiders, we resolve this with genuine policies that mean that we have expectations that a child can actually behave from like 8:30 in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Was to reintegrate children back into mainstream education.
And he's come from this, right? So he's come from these units of excluded children where no one can cope with them. How on earth did he get to the point where he thinks that he thinks the answer to what he's seen, which won't be someone's excluded from a school because they're gay, or because they are flamboyant, or because they're black. He would have seen children excluded because they can't actually behave. I can't think how he's gone from seeing chaos, abandonment, probably feeling very, very unloved. You know, there's a reason that an 11-year-old can't actually hold it together all day. And it isn't because of their gender identity and people having a go at them all day and that they're really trans. It's because that they don't have proper structure and foundation which enable them to thrive. And I just can't imagine why the solution, like his career trajectory has gone from dealing with kids who are at the precipice of like ruining the rest of their lives to this stuff that he's gone into. In fact, I'm not even going to spend any more time on him because I think that this live stream is going to be too long. But this is why I think you have to know what's going on in your schools. I don't care what the Labour government say or won't say or do or blah, blah, blah. I don't think they're going to do anything about this. This is going to come down to you. These people have they've groomed the governors, so you have to be a governor. They've groomed the teachers, so you have to be a governor. You have to read the policies. You have to be ahead of the game. And to the rest of you, if you're not involved in a school and because your children are too old or you don't have any children, then you have to be in other areas where these discussions are being had. So over the next couple of years throughout the United Kingdom, there will be national elections in like Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, and there will be council elections everywhere. And I'm saying to you, Party of Women is your only hope. So please, for the love of God, become a counsellor. Just do it. Just do it. Just ask yourself, like, why won't you do it? Like, what's standing in the way of you doing it? So just do that, number one. Number two, join Party of Women. Give us some of your cold, hard cash. Number three, think of ways to fundraise for Party of Women. Go and join Let Women Speak and locals so you can have your events, so you can raise the alarm and then you can bring people in. But this is how we're going to solve this. But you absolutely 100%, you have to offer a political solution to this. And you have to know what's going on in your children's schools. It is absolutely not, it's just not acceptable not to be involved. Now, there will be barriers for some of you not to be involved, and I'm sure you've thought about them long and hard. But to everybody else, to everyone else who's ever stood in front of anyone and said anything, who's ever felt the nerves before you go in and you question authority, we need you. Like, I don't need you as much as people where you live need you. People who've never met you need you. People who've never heard of Party of Women need you. We need all of you. Look, the great and the good are not going to come and wave their magic wands. We're not going to get endorsed by anybody. We don't have penises, so all the men involved in philanthropic kind of causes, they're not going to donate to us. We're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, like every other woman who's ever wanted anything. We're going to have to do it the hard way. And that means all of us, every single female bloody voice that we can possibly muster. But the time to build is now. We can't wait. We can't wait. It's going to be so much worse over the next few years. And maybe Trump will get in. I don't know. I've heard from some people they don't think he will. They think abortion is too big an issue. It's too exciting, and no matter how much it might be left state to state, it is a bigger threat to most women. You know, manspreading is a bigger threat to most women than boys in their daughters' changing rooms. So we are just going to have to be the voice of reason, but we can't be the voice of reason if you're all silent and too frightened to speak. So if you can speak, join Party of Women, give us your money, fundraise for us, then I promise we will win. If you can go and talk to your children's school and find out just what the bloody hell they're playing at, then I promise we will win. And do you know why else we're going to win? Because I never lose.
Me the drive, for I'm all aglow and alive. What a day this has been. What a rare mood I'm in. Why, it's almost like being in love.